Herversion systems. This is the compact bone, not the spongy bone. And so this is a transection through the compact bone. This would be the marrow cavity over here. This is the outside of the bone here. There's a periosteum and an endosteum that contain the bone progenitor cells, the osteoblasts, if you will. All of these little spots here are osteocytes arranged in these rings, concentric rings. The ring is called a Herversion system. In the middle of the rings, there's an Herversion canal. That's what you see there. If you cut the bone long ways, you'll see the canals you're cutting long ways down here. So this is a cross section. Remember, this is not through the entire bone. If that's the bone, this is only one side of it. You've got the marrow cavity with the spongy bone, and then this is going to be repeated again over here. Follow me? Yeah. Now, these Herversion systems are responsible for making the compact bone grow that way. Remember, this is the diameter of bone. So they're going to make the bone grow that way. Okay, what I do, can we start the thing? They're going to come in here tomorrow morning and fix the lights in here. Shut off.
Yeah, it has to go all the way around and then it'll let you go right.
Herversion systems are really cool. They're really complex, yet simple in their design. If we look at this schematic here, you can see the spongy bone here. Here are all the Herversion systems. Within the canal, there's a blood vessel. There are two blood, an artery and a vein, and they're nerves. Not many nerves, but they're nerves. And those nerves are not related to pain. They're related to regulation of blood flow. You can break a bone. When you break a bone, when you break the spongy bone or the compact bone, it's not painful. What's painful is the periosteum and the endosteum. Those are highly innervated by pain fibers. Okay. The thing about these little osteocytes, and since they're all embedded in matrix, they're osteocytes, is that as they lay down the type 1 collagen, they do it in perpendicular fashion to the concentric ring of cells next to it. So if you look at it up here, you see the collagen is laid down perpendicular. This is like plywood. That's why plywood is so freaking strong, is because the wood fibers are laid perpendicular to each other, the different layers. That's why it's so strong. That's exactly what's going on here with the collagen fibers. You talk about Langer's lines out in the skin, this is Langer lines gone wild. Also, if you look on the edge, on the outer edge and on the inner edge, you don't have the Herversion systems. You have concentric rings here called lamellae. You've got an external and an internal lamellae of osteocytes. And the collagen that's laid down in these doggone lamellae is 90 degrees to each other. So this really adds a lot of strength to the bone. So when we go back to the first slide in the whole talk about, you're increasing the width and strength of bone. This is why. So remember, though, the bone doesn't diffuse. They're connected by canaliculi. And that's what you see here. All these little osteocytes are connected by canaliculi to the Haversian canal, which is where the exchange with these fenestrated capillaries occurs. So you've got all of this. I mean, a bone can only get so big because you've got to be able to move nutrients all the way through these canaliculi to reach to the end. The compact bone can only get so thick. Pretty cool, huh? Here's a periosteum out here. Well, actually, this is called, at the edge of a Haversian system is called a cement line. Cement line. That, I was going to say that's the periosteum, but that's not the periosteum. That would be the cement line of one Haversian system. If we go back to here, that would be the cement line, that yellow thing right there. And each one has a cement line around it. Sort of isolates it. These things, here's another picture. You can see that osteocyte floating in the lacunae with its little processes entering the canaliculi, touching with each other in a erotic fashion. So that's how you get the exchange of nutrients. I have just learned some information at the break that I'm just dying to tell you, but I can't tell you yet because I can't prove it. But there's some big shit going down. And you need to be thankful you're where you are. I'm just saying. You'll learn about it soon enough. So here we go. There's a Haversian canal up there, and you can see the canaliculi in this specimen here. How do you get these Haversian systems? Well, you go out here to the edge of the bone, or the compact bone. You've got the outer circumferential lamellae. What happens is there's an indention, 1, 2, there's an indention. Now you got a little capillary that runs up there on the edge of in the periosteum, right there on the edge of the bone. So at the outer edge of the bone, it's the lamellae just essentially start growing up on the edges and surround the capillary. And that forms the Haversian system. You see it, boom, 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 right there. And then this one will form. Right? You look puzzled.
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah.
All right. This capillary right here used to be that one right there. It got surrounded by these growing bone. Now, the capillaries that go in from the side of the bone to reach the Haversian canal artery go through a canal called Volkmann's canal. So there are two types of canals, the Haversian canal and Volkmann's canal. And what happens is you constantly are remodeling these Haversian systems just like you do the spongy bone. So one will form, that's the first generation here, and then others will form right beside it. Now you got second generation and the third generation. So that by the time you get to the adult, you have all of these pieces and parts of Haversian systems in the lamina. So that's what you can kind of see here. Here's a Haversian system. There's a sort of an intramembranous part. There's another Haversian system. So they just form one on top, one beside each other. Not on top of each other, beside each other. Okay? And they grow outwards. So there are two types of bone formation. Intramembranous and endochondral. We're getting ready to talk about endochondral. Of the intermembranous, there are two types of, well, three types really. One is a bone blastema. The other is a spongy bone, and the other is compact bone with the Herbersian systems. Okay, so now let's talk about how you get bones to elongate, and that's endochondral. The bone is described in different ways. So, this is the diaphysis. That's the metaphysis. This is the epiphysis, and that's the epiphyseal plate. Diaphysis, metaphysis, epiphysis, and epiphyseal plate. Epiphyseal plate is made of cartilage. Cartilage is not ossified, you know that. So it is radiolucent. Cartilage does not show up on X-ray. That's why you can't see the cartilage, you can't see your meniscus on a plain X-ray. That's why you can see growth plates or epiphyseal plates on X-ray. All right. How does it work? Well, there are different zones in endochondral formation. Now, remember, endochondral formation is going north and south. What happens here is we've got this cartilage up here. In the middle here, we've started bone formation. We've started digesting the bone, and we're starting to digest it outward in each direction. So the regions of the bone, the eventual bone here, we've got the epiphyseal cartilage is at the very top. Next is called the resting zone or the reserve zone of cartilage. This is hyaline cartilage. The side or deep to, or inferior to that is the proliferative zone where the chondrocytes start stacking up on each other. See, here's the reserve zone. Now the proliferative zone, they start stacking up on each other. And then there's a hypertrophic zone here where they start enlarging. And then down here, you've got the vascular invasion zone. Blood vessels are in here, have dumped into here. This is the bone marrow. You see these spicules, these bony spicules? They are digesting the cartilage in that direction. They are digesting the cartilage in that direction. Osteoprogenitor cells are what you see right here. Osteoblast and osteoclast are right here. This is what it looks like. There's the reserve zone up there, proliferative and hypertrophic zone here, and now this is where you start seeing the transition from hyaline cartilage to bone. This stuff is eating the cartilage in that direction. The cartilage is growing in that direction. So it's like the cartilage is running and the bone formation is chasing it. But realize that this is the bone, it's happening at both ends. So the bone is growing in both directions. Chondrocytes run and osteoclasts are chasing them. That's what this illustration shows here, is the transition from primarily a cartilage matrix to primarily a bony matrix. That's how the diaphysis elongates. Well, wait a minute. If that's how the diaphysis elongates, I get that. Well, what is this? And what is that? What's the epiphyseal plate? Where is that in here? It's not in here. What we have to do to get an epiphyseal plate, then otherwise the bones would just keep growing forever, right? These guys would keep running and those guys would keep chasing, the bones would grow forever. That's not how it works. Bones stop growing. If you just let it go, this is what would happen. You keep going forever. We got to do something to stop the bone from growing. This is the primary ossification center here in the middle of the diaphysis, right? What we're going to do now is we're going to create secondary ossification centers on the bulbous ends. And that's what happens here. Here's the primary ossification center. There's a secondary ossification center that emerges in the epiphysis of bone, or the flared out end. Now remember what's happening. These guys are digesting bone running that way. The secondary ossification center starts in the middle and starts growing outward. So it's going to start growing outward, and eventually it's going to reach the edge. When it reaches the edge, the bone stops growing because two things happen. One is, when the primary and secondary ossification centers meet, that's the last vestige of cartilage. That's the epiphyseal plate. Once you eat the epiphyseal plate, the bone can't grow any longer. Why can't the bone grow any longer? It's something I said about 4 hours ago. Well, probably about an hour ago. What did I say that you did not find on the articular surface of bone? It doesn't have a perichondrium. There is no new chondrocytes laid down on the articular surface, so they can't continue to run. So once the epiphyseal plate closes, you're done. The last epiphyseal plate that closes in you is your iliac crest at 19 years of age. It's the presence of that epiphyseal plate. If you x-ray a young kid, you see a radiolucent line. That's because it's cartilage. That's type 2 cartilage. Or hyaline cartilage, which is... There you go. Taylor, you okay?
Perfect.
All right. Any questions about that? That's how it works. That's how it works. The unstable part of this is obviously that epiphyseal plate. Tomorrow, Scott Innerwitz is going to talk to you about fractures through the epiphyseal plate. They're described as Salter-Harris, or the two folks that are named after Salter-Harris, 1 through, I think, 6. You okay? All right. We're good. Did you find out the news?
No.
Okay.
What's
I'm
your name?
surprised.
I want to, though.
Yeah, I'm surprised. No. All right. Any questions about any of that? If you drop out of this class onto Facebook or something, you're probably, it's statewide news involving PAs. All right. Here's a primary ossification center here. So the secondary centers would, I'm not encouraging you to go on to Facebook. Just saying. Sophie's here now. Sophie, I know you're there, I can see it in your face. Okay, so here's like a finger bone right here. Here's the periosteum around it. This is the primary center. There, that would become the growth plate eventually, right there. This is intramembranous ossification right here and right there. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The spicules would be intramembranous. That line is endochondral ossification. Julie, you see what I mean? No? This is endochondral ossification. The growth plate is endochondral ossification. The resting, the reserve zone, the hypertrophic, and so on. That's endochondral, it's going that way. The spicules here and the Herbersian systems out here in the compact bone, that's the intramembranous. Take a second and talk about the synovium here. Spongy bone, compact bone right there. The periosteum is out here in the diaphysis. It becomes continuous with the fibrous layer of the joint capsule. The fibrous layer of the joint capsule. Notice that the articular surface of the bones are fitted with hyaline cartilage. Inside the innermost layer here is contains a membrane, the synovial membrane. It's only 2 or 3 cells thick. Only 2 or 3 cells thick. So this is the synovial, the capsule here, and that's the synovial membrane. This produces the fluid that, again, is high in hyaluronic acid, in chondroitin sulfate. So there are a lot of adipose cells in the joint capsule. There's a lot of fibroblasts that maintain it. Inflammatory processes like arthritis, not osteoarthritis, that's more wear and tear, a loss of the articular cartilage. I'm talking about rheumatoid arthritis or gout or any other type of inflammatory arthritis here. Usually involves mediator cells out in this space here. These cells out in here become loaded with lymphocytes, macrophages, those types of cells, producing a lot of substances, interleukins, and substances like tumor necrosis factor, TNF. Tumor necrosis factor is a chemical mediator that brings in more inflammatory cells. The biologics that treat arthritis, there are different classes of drugs to treat arthritis. There's NSAIDs, there are drugs called DMARDs, D-M-A-R-D-S. I think you have a lecture on it this Friday. Disease-modifying anti-rheumatoid drugs. They would be like methotrexate, Plaquenil is another one. Very good drug. And then there are the biologics. The biologics are these over here, the Enbrels, the Remicades. These drugs, as a matter of fact, those two in particular, Remicade and Enbrel, are anti-TNF drugs. That's how they work. The last one up there blocks interleukin-1. These are the biologics. These are the new. These are the things you see. Who's the golfer? The left-handed golfer, Mickelson. No, he's got the arthritis. He's got the psoriasis, right? Yeah, he's on some kind of biologic. But the people with the arthritis on Enbrel, you know, the mother out there playing with her kids. You guys don't watch TV? These commercials are all over the place. These are the biologics. They always have a whole list of complications, possible side effects like development of cancer and like dying. I mean, you're jacking with some serious crap here when you block TNF.
Isn't it only like 1% though? for the
What's
chance-
that?
Isn't it only like 1% though for the chance of like developing lymphoma?
I don't know, but you know, if it's that one person, it's 100%. Right? If you got the lymphoma because you took Enbrel, there you got 100%.
I'm just curious because like I shadowed at a rheumatology clinic and they talked about this and my person I shadowed, Jana, Shoemaker, she basically told me that that the studies that they did over that weren't necessarily because of the drugs, that they may have just been correlation.
Who knows what's correlation and what's the drug? They have to report. It just so happens that the incidence of lymphoma goes up when you use these drugs. So you have to stop and think about this. I mean, you know, Crohn's disease is another inflammatory disease where these biologics are used a lot in people your age. And, you know, that just makes me uncomfortable to put Julie on something that's blocking a compound that you need to survive. Your immune system needs to survive. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. I just don't have the cojones to do that. A lot of people do. There was a guy one time got in trouble because he was giving some, like a 6-year-old, these drugs. They're not indicated for that young, but he was giving, so it was a physician. Okay, so a couple of pathologic processes here. Osteoporosis, remember, so the whole thing about the bone formation and laying down bone is that it's a yin and yang type thing here. You want to be able to lay down bone at the same pace that you take up bone. And as you're growing, if you're growing, preferably you want to lay down bone faster than you take it up. Is when that gets imbalanced and when you wind up taking up more than you lay down, that's osteoporosis. You're going to have a lecture by Heather Kuklinski on Thursday, I think. She does a great job. This is all she does, osteoporosis. Very, very significant disease. Affects everybody, I mean, just everybody. It's crazy. The thing that helps you prevent osteoporosis, though, especially you little women, is physical activity when you're in your 20s. The more bone you lay down now means you have more bone to give up 50 years from now. So, okay. Paget's disease of the bone is different than Paget's disease of the breast that we've talked about. It's a different process. Paget's disease of the bone is where the bone is laid down, but it's not laid down according to the plan that I just described with the lamellae and the organization of bone. It's just, osteoblasts are laying down bone like crazy. And it's just, as it says here, a collage of matrix madness. That's what it looks like. And because it's not laid down properly, it's not as strong. So people with Paget's disease of the bone suffer from a lot of fractures, easy fractures. So it's not a malignant process like Paget's disease of the breast is. When you're looking at tumors, the ones with the little arrowheads here are the ones you need to know. There are benign tumors in this column, and there are malignant tumors over here. These are the different features of these things. You're going to see osteomas a lot. Osteomas are just benign growths of bone. Anybody here have an osteoma? Has been told they have an osteoma? No? They're just, it doesn't look right, and it's benign. It's benign. So usually don't do anything about them. They are sometimes painful, and if they are painful, then they're excised. My sister had an osteoma. It says here less than 2 centimeters. Hers got large, and it affected the integrity of her femur. They had to go in and cut her femur off, or cut it off. They had to transect it to get the osteoma out and then reattach her. one leg is significantly shorter. She goes in circles. She cannot walk a straight line. She always walks in circles. That's bullshit. You believe that? No, her legs are the same length. Okay. Osteoblastoma is spine. And it's so why would you x-ray somebody that complained of low back pain? There is no indication without radiculopathy to do plain films of the spine. This is one example, though, of what you can find, though, on a plain film with a patient presenting with chronic low back pain. So there's no indication to x-ray the spine if it's ligamentous or chronic back pain like that, or disc related. But if you're thinking it could be bony related, then yeah, they have value there. Osteochondroma, these are goofy looking things. They come on a stalk, they look like a mushroom. You see it right there, osteochondroma. The difference between chondromas is they're cartilage and they're not calcified, so you start seeing them as not quite radio-opaque. If you look up here in this chondroma, you see that large chondroma there, it doesn't show up on the x-ray. It's a defect, that's a chondroma. Unfortunately, you can't really tell a chondroma from a chondrosarcoma. A chondrosarcoma is malignant. Anytime you use the word sarcoma, that means malignancy. Chondrosarcoma and osteosarcomas are the nasty two. Osteosarcoma being much more common. Before we talk about that, though, talk about Ewing's sarcoma. This is not a classic bony tumor or cartilage tumor. It actually has the appearance more of lymphoid tissue, related to that mesenchymal line, not the connective tissue line. Okay, I don't think I have a Ewing's in here. Now, oh, here it is right here. This is the Ewing's sarcoma here. It's not a it's not a radio-opaque tumor. Where it says periosteal reaction, where it has arisen is beneath the periosteum. So as it's grown, it's lifted the periosteum up. The periosteum is laying down bone, right? So you see this calcified edge right there and the uncalcified part below it. Periosteal reactions are usually not very good. Okay, osteosarcomas, most of them occur here in the knee, either above or below the knee joint itself, in the distal femur or the proximal tibia. 60% of them are right there. A much smaller percentage in the pelvis and shoulder, but most of them occur in the knee. Anytime you have a late teenager, or anytime you have a child, I'll say a child, going anywhere from 5 years old on up to 25 years old that complains of chronic knee pain, get a freaking x-ray. Just get a plain film x-ray. Because this is not what you want to miss. This is a highly malignant tumor that spreads quick and kills certainly. The only cure here is amputation. This is what it looks like right here. My daughter's been complaining of her left knee bothering her for, like a month every day, and it's crap. So I took her in. I mean, most kids have aches and pains, growing pains. You know about growing pain, right? It's probably the same with her. She's overweight, she's not active, but occasionally does things. It's probably just, that kind of issue. But it's been going on for a few weeks here. We're gonna get a quick x-ray. And so it's clean thing. Whoops, one more. Bone formation or remodeling after a fracture. So this is the two contact bones with the marrow cavity in between them. What happens is, so if you break a bone, what you want to try to do is approximate or reduce the two sides. You don't have to get them perfectly lined up. You can get them within some degrees of each other, but as long as you get them approximated, then they typically will remodel, and they do that by forming a hyaline cartilage callus. Callus is what this is called, a callus. That hyaline cartilage is just like, it reverts back to when you were an embryo. When you started out as hyaline cartilage, it got replaced through an intramembranous process by bone. This is what you want to see. Here's a fracture through the fibula here. They didn't, that's reduced pretty well right there, but you see it's not perfectly lined up. You wait about 3 weeks or a month, and you're going to see this. You see the callus around it? You see it's still not lined up. And it eventually will almost perfect, but usually not ever perfect. And you can usually see, look at a bone and say, that bone's been broken before. Because there's a slight angulation or a slight step off or something like that. If you have a bone though, and after 2 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks, there's no callus formation, that is an ominous sign of a non-union in a bone. And that's going to require an advanced therapy. You're either going to have to immobilize them better, put a TENS unit on it, a little electrical bone stimulator. You're going to take them to surgery, put a plate in it. You're going to have to do a bone graft. You're going to have to do something to get that bone to grow, if that callus is not forming after 2 or 3 weeks. It's a funny thing about kids. Like the younger you are, the faster this process is. You take a 6-year-old and break their forearm, both bones. You put them in a long arm cast, and you'll put long arm casts on each other in December. You put them in a cast, and you come back 3 weeks later, like crap, where was the fracture? Those little son of bitches, they can remodel and repair and realign like that. It would take my old ass months to do that. In a small child, it's just truly impressive. If you come back a week later, they got a solid callus. 3 weeks later, they've got the bone. 6 weeks later, it's remodeled. You can't even tell it was broken. To that end, if you break a bone in an adult, you can only tolerate so many angles of not being right, so many degrees, right? You have to reduce it so that it comes within a certain margin of degrees. Otherwise, it won't remodel straight. In a kid, like a clavicle, for example, a little, high school kid or junior high school kid breaks a clavicle during football, as long as it's not overlapped by more than an inch, you don't have to do anything. It'll remodel like new. So, any questions about that? Jordan?
So is it just the overlapping what determines, because I've seen surgeons have to go and put plates and screws in younger kids, to fix
It depends.
fractures.
It depends on if you're going to learn about different fracture types. It depends, if it's all the way through both compact layers, if it's only through one. There are a bunch of variables. And the people that are going to be talking to you over the next few days will tell you some of those variables. I think that's all we need to talk about today.
Do you want to see a cool fraction?
Pardon me?
Want to see a cool fraction?
See a cool fracture?
Yeah.
I'll show you a cool something too. Yeah, see, that's gonna require a little bit of manipulation. Yeah, so is that what type of fracture is that? Is that a Colles or a Smith?
The higher.
Oh, remember from anatomy?
You have to dig deeper.
What is it?
Is that the common freshman or?
You have to tell us the news.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I can't-
If it's gonna be all over, if we can find it. How about his
Because I don't know if it's true. I don't know. So there was
Doesn't matter if it's true.
Good Shepherd patient, one that Hayla's seen, and who saw the catheter? Amy saw the other day. She kept telling us that she was missing the bone here. Did she say she was cut out during surgery?
Yeah.
When they removed her uterus, they removed her bone. And I just thought she was talking about, maybe she had seen on an x-ray the pubic symphysis, and that's what she was talking about. So she brought her x-rays in the other day, and I looked at them on my computer upstairs, and no kidding, she has no pubic symphysis. Symphyses. That is the most bizarre x-ray I think I've ever seen.
He sent it to me.
This was in Mexico. I have no idea why she's got a suprapubic catheter. So you tell me, is that a Colles or a Smith?